Welcome back, Jake. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
The world has changed since the last time you and I talked, huh?
Uh, yeah, I can't go get myself some chicken wings at a local restaurant like I used to be able to like last time we talked. So yeah,
Yeah,
things have changed.
you could go to a drive-through.
Yeah, yeah,
Are you
it's
doing
crazy.
that, or huh?
I said it's crazy out there, and it's been just it's almost been like a dream. Sometimes I wake up in the mornings, I'm just like, is this really happening? So
Yeah,
it's been interesting. So
it's surreal, and the some of the market moves have also been unprecedented. You want to grab the screen here, Jake? Steve, stop sharing, please. And
there we go.
okay, so you just go to that little green box so we could see the teardrops. Teardrops, one appropriate technical indicator when there are a lot of tears out there, not just um, in financial terms, but what's happening to people. I mean, I've been touched. My older sister is in the hospital with COVID right now.
Wow.
So let me ask you, Jake. I guess the big question is, I don't know what you want to talk about, but now I could tell you're looking at this megaphone formation. So here's the big debate. Was that the low, or B, we're going to get a retest, or C, we're going to make new lows? What camp do you come down on in here? And what's your chart telling you here? A failing
Well,
rally?
I definitely could tell you that I've in the past have been on all three sides and have
Yeah.
made the trade on all three sides. For me personally, just from experience, I am like everybody else out there. I have no idea what's going to happen. Honestly, I don't even know what's going to happen next week with all of this. And so, obviously the market's always unpredictable, but this whole nother leg of just uncertainty really makes it hard. So for me, I've been in the position where we've had a big drop, and I was 100% convinced that we were just gonna start the next depression. And one thing that I always remember from that was, so many people told me, "Don't fight the Fed." And I'm like, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm 22 years old and I know everything. And that didn't work out too well. So for me right now, I think I got to go with my experience. I think from the
Always.
chart for what we're seeing, one thing that we know for sure right now, what I have here is we'll touch on raindrops a little bit, but I want to go over
Okay.
this anchored volume profile, because this is incredibly powerful and it gives you a perspective that is really hard to do elsewhere. And the unique thing about this on TrendSpider, the volume by price or volume profile, whatever you want to call it, is not anything that's new or improved. What's
Is it
really
compared to like market profiles that
yeah,
people use?
it's essentially a market profile, except you
Okay.
have the ability to say, I want to know what the market profile is since the March 23rd bottom. I want to know the market profile since the February high. And you'll see as I move this line, it
Yeah.
anchors that point and starts the market profile from a different point. So
You can't
one
do
thing
that if you just use market profiles, because I know a lot of people use it. They don't have that capability. Just
generally
using.
it's a function of the history. So generally,
Yeah.
like if I had the market profile up, we would
Yeah.
start the market profile from the last candle here. But
Okay.
we want to start a market profile from when there was a status quo change in the market. This was a
Great
very
point.
big change in the market. You've
Yeah.
got this huge peak here. This was when these buyers maybe started to become sellers. This is when you become a different participant in the market. So we have to start the point and time where that status quo changed. But what's interesting here is obviously we can see that we are at what I call the break-even zone. And the break-even zone is essentially just your point of control. But I call it the break-even zone to understand what that actually means. At the break-even zone, if the price is at the break-even zone, the majority of shares that are holding within this distribution are break-even. So you're pretty much at your equilibrium at this point. So a lot of the time, if the price is above this area, you're going to call this like a demand zone because this is where previous demand was. Now, let's say that, we've got a different example like Tesla, and you've got something a little different where, this area, if we anchor it from here, this area initially acted as our supply zone because there's a big block of shares holding here, but this particular set of volume is including these recent candles. So before these candles were here, we still had this block of volume just holding here, and this was what we would call the supply zone because these were all the people that bought too early, and they're the ones that are now breaking even at this area above, and so they may come in and add supply on the market when they break even. So the point of this is to be able to see where those supply and demand zones are. From an SPY perspective, you can see that we're pretty much right at that break even zone. So for me, this next, let's say 3 to 5 days, especially with some big earnings this week, I think is really going to tell us what's going on. Now, one thing I want to mention,
underneath the break even zone tells you something.
Well, we've got a big volume gap here. So it tells us that we don't have a lot of participants in the market here. So what a lot of the time happens is you've got like a friction zone that will fill very quickly because there's just not a lot of participants there. So a lot of the time,
it's like a vacuum.
Exactly. It's like an air pocket. So,
okay.
And this is the same thing as Tesla. We had this green zone here. It wasn't as defined because we didn't have all this price action yet to build up this volume. But this block of volume was here when we were down here. And this volume gap was here as well. And you'll see, look at how quickly the price moved through that volume gap. It only took 2 days for the price to move from 260 to 278 because there wasn't a lot of supply until we got to this area. Those people who just dealt with a 20% drawdown are now break even and they're like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe I want to get out of this. And so that changes the supply and demand, just overall general kind of circumstances. And then you've got your let's say 2 weeks of kind of just nothing, just the market trying to figure out if this is a demand or supply zone.
Great look.
So, this is important for a lot of reasons. Let's say that I'm going to turn this off. And then what's really cool about this is we can actually go in and say, I know what the volume profile is of this megaphone channel. Because all we have to do is turn on the volume by price. And if we start it from the start of this megaphone channel, let's just say it starts here. It doesn't really matter if we start it here or here. You're going to see that. Look where all of the supply is. We just rocketed into this massive supply zone. So it's going to be hard for the price to really break this barrier, if you will. And notice that we've got the monthly SMA 20 on here as well, acting as resistance. So it's not just supply above. You've also got confluence of indicators that people are looking at. People look at the monthly SMA. People look at these indicators that essentially become self-fulfilling. And so naturally, after a 30% plus move up in the markets in less than 6 weeks, you're going to finally hit that exhaustion zone where it's kind of like that air pocket or volume gap or just kind of zone, this vacuum. When we were down here, we had all of this volume above. So what happened is everybody who bought too early is essentially just holding, and that creates this kind of like magnet back up to this area because all of those
What created the turn? Was there anything that you saw besides the megaphone line down there that told you that could be a bottom?
So if we go to the monthly chart and we do the same thing with the volume by price, but we anchor it from the 2009 low, you'll see what happens here. Well, we bounced right above this massive shelf of volume.
Yeah.
So, you're not always going to get this
helpful.
Perfect. So this allowed you to see, whoa.
So when we were crashing, did you go out to your monthlies, Jake? to look for things
Yes.
like this?
Yeah, 100%. Because
Good.
all the daily levels are breaking down.
Yeah. Okay. And on the previous chart, you were showing uh, where people wanted to get out on this rally. So people were buying the dip real early, and the market
Mhm.
continued to accelerate from where they were coming in and getting long. I don't think it's that chart. Oh, yeah, it's to the one on the right where you show all the supply. But does that imply people are buying the dips before we made a low? And that's why we have all this overhead supply, because they were early?
Yep, exactly. So
Okay.
the thing that I really wish we had on the platform was the ability to go back in time and be able to show like what the volume profile looked on March 23rd, which I'm sure it will come at some time. But that was something that was absolutely fascinating about this was you had all of this supply above, you know, a lot of people would say, yeah, there's a lot of volume here because you just had a ton of consolidation. No, this volume was here before that. So yes,
Yeah.
this block right here was all of those people saying, "Oh, I am a genius. I just bought the market when it's 20%
Right.
down in
That's
two
what I
and a half
thought.
weeks."
Right.
And then all of a sudden we get a continued drawdown, and all of a sudden they're down
Yeah.
20% in 2 weeks. So
Right.
as the price gets back up, we turn this gain or this loss to a gain. All of a sudden, from the lows, they're up 30% in less than a 2 month period, and they're like, "All right, maybe I'm going to get out of this. I just got furloughed. I just did that. I just did this. I'm out." And so that adds to the supply as we get back here. So
Right.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's all those people who thought they were, the next Warren Buffett buying the dip, and then we get another 20% drop. Those are the people that are now our holders above that are going to act as that resistance zone.
Okay. Any other instruments you were planning on talking about?
Well, you mentioned the raindrops, so we might as well jump in them. I want to mention the raindrops because I think this is something that was really cool last week. A lot of people got bearish last week a little early, which, I always generally enter a trade early, so I can't say anything about that. But just from a bear perspective, we had something that was really interesting last week when you look at essentially the hollow candle versus the raindrop. And before I go into that, we obviously got to go over what the raindrop is. The raindrop is a volume-based candle. So instead of an open and a close, what you have here is you've got the left-hand side here, the left candle here, bar, which is the volume-weighted average price for the first half of the period. So we're on the daily chart, so that is going to mean that this is the first half of the day. And so typically a regular bar chart, this is your open. And then on the right-hand side, this is your close. Well, in this case, instead of the close, this is your volume weighted average price for the second half of the period. So what's really interesting about this is you can actually see how the volume is flowing throughout the range of the day or the 30-minute candle or whatever you're looking at. So what you can do is using this, we have the first layer, which is the left-hand VWAP and the right-hand VWAP, first and second. But then we have the volume profile overlaid on top. So you can see where that volume was flowing. So if we draw a line, this horizontal line, and we do a previous high here from April 17th, you'll see something really interesting. On the regular candle, we did not close through it. We actually just wicked above it. So, you're like, all right, well, we did intraday move through it, but we did not actually close through it. Is this bullish or bearish? What the raindrop does is, and it's not going to tell you if it's bullish or bearish, but it's going to tell you, were there participants at the top of this range? Sure, there was a wick here. Was that one transaction that just pushed the price up for a second or two, or was there
According to
actually
the
volume?
raindrops, yes.
Yep, exactly. Look at
Okay,
how
so
much volume.
the raindrops told you, so here I am, a novice learning about your stuff. The raindrop, unlike the candle without the teardrop, I'm kidding, raindrop, it said, was telling you, the message was, even though he had a wick, um, the raindrop closed strong in indicating that the wick was kind of meaningless and you should look for more strength. Am I reading it correctly?
Exactly. And the thing is, a lot of people will say, how do you know that volume wasn't sellers? Well, of course it was sellers. Someone's got to buy it from
Yeah,
someone. So we know these were sellers, but more importantly, we know that those buyers stepped in and accumulated those shares above the resistance line. If
that's
these
an edge.
buyers if these buyers were not
Yeah,
strong, you would have not seen that accumulating up here. You would have seen the price would have had to drop for them to come in and actually buy that up. So the fact that the buyers stepped in during that selling is what we're more focused on. And so
okay,
then you have your
beautiful.
two-day move up.
Nice, Jake. Well, if you have no other instruments you want to cover, be a good time to tell people how they could look into your software and integrate that into their trading if they have an interest. You want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a ton of different platforms we're on, but Twitter is definitely the main one. So if you want to follow us and learn more about these things before you jump in, you can follow us on Twitter and just see how we implement these in everyday trading. And
At
then you can go to
TrendSpider?
trendspider.
Yeah,
Yep, at TrendSpider. And then you
at
can go to
TrendSpider.
TrendSpider. Yep. And do we have our, yep. And so if you went down to the bottom on our trendspider.com, just main page, you'd be able to go to any of these social media handles as well. So you can check out everything on the website. We have our pricing page here just under pricing. You can check out all of the different products overview. One thing that I want to mention, a lot of people may look at this and say, this is a really intense tool. There's too much going on. We know. We also have created pretty much a university and a weekly podcast going over the platform, so you're able to get familiar with how we're using it, how others are using it, and so it's something that it's not like, hey, here's TrendSpider, good luck. We're there every step of the way to help you out and make sure that you really understand the power of this thing.
Any fraternity houses, sorority houses at the university?
Nope, not yet. Just keg
Because
standard.
that would convert your podcast into a podcast.
Yeah, it would. Too bad. Yeah, honestly, who knows? We may have to be virtual.
I knew I'd trip you up with that one, Jake. Anyway, Jake, I hope you and your, all the people you're in business with and your family remain untouched by this. And, let me coach you. Be patient with yourself. No one alive has ever traded through a pandemic before. And I appreciate you coming here. I'm a fan. I root for you guys. And thank you, my trading water brother, for coming in today and giving us a couple of nice looks in the spiders.
Thank you so much for having me. And I wish the same for you. And I wish a speedy recovery for your sister and hope she's well. And everyone else out there, stay healthy and safe.
Okay, man. Thank you for coming in today, buddy.
Hey, you're welcome.
Appreciate
it. And have a great week.
Okay, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow for Turnaround Tuesday. Don't just count your raindrops. Don't just count your pips. Don't just count your Krugs. Count your blessings. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Adios.